This is Rémy Reads, number 12. And today we'll be covering an interesting combination of books. The first one is Motivational Interviewing for Leadership, and the second is The 12 Clichés of Selling and Why They Work. Now, initially, it may seem like a disparate collection of books to be talking about in conjunction with one another, but they share they're both cut from the same cloth. And to spoil the surprise, the main point that I would like to make while covering these two books is that all good relationships are therapeutic. And I say that because if you are going about treating people in the right way and they're treating you in the right way, then you will grow personally, spiritually, professionally, physically, mentally, in all ways. And that's how you know a relationship is therapeutic. I can certainly, everyone in their life can point to relationships where they say, wow, knowing this person on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis, or maybe even month to month, is someone that in all ways, or at least in a couple meaningful ways, has me develop my life into being a better person than I was the day before. And that's what invariably I'm sure we would all like. Now, motivational interviewing, to start off, is a technique or a method used in the context of therapy by psychologists, which is founded on what can easily be remembered in the acronym of OARS. And that stands for open-ended questions, affirmations, reflection, and, well, as the authors of Am I Lead is using as the final element of OARS, is evocation. So it's asking questions in a meaningful way. But in the original acronym is summarizing. Open-ended questions, affirmations, reflection, and summarizing. Now that's important because that is how you establish rapport with a person. That is how you engage with another individual in such a way that makes them feel heard and supported. Because imagine if we're having a conversation, and this is exactly what you should do whether you're just having a chat with someone or you're in a heated debate, where they make their point, and the first thing that you do is ask them questions so that you can better understand what their point is, because you're not trying to disparage them to your greatest ability. You're trying to understand them to your greatest ability. So you ask open-ended questions to that effect, and then you affirm the beliefs or the opinions or whatever it is that they have and say, I can understand why you would think that because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Then you reflect back to them what their whole deal is, whatever they were describing or enunciating, whether that was an opinion, an effect, or whatever. You reflect back to them, say, this is what you were saying, this is what you were thinking. And then at that point, that's when you can summarize. So reflecting, the difference between reflecting and summarizing is that reflecting is more so taking on the impression that the other person is giving. So if they're angry about something, you could say, yeah, I get why you're angry about that. That's ridiculous. And then you summarize and say, okay, as a whole, this is the entire point that you're making. And wow, that really gets you places very quickly in conversations in a good way, because not only is that an effective method for building a relationship with someone, it's also great for establishing trust. When you do that with someone and someone sees that you're putting forth a genuine effort toward understanding their point before you give an opinion of or response of your own, wow, that's powerful in the sense that they will see, okay, they're not just having this conversation so they can say whatever they want, and then that's out of their system, that's off of their chest, and that's all they care about. It's no, this person genuinely cares about what I'm spouting. So that's the foundation, which is why I've spent a few minutes covering it here, of what we'll be talking about today. So keep that in mind as we're rolling through these different excerpts and different quotes. So motivational interviewing has more to it. MI has more to it than just ORs, but that is the most easily identifiable element to it, as well as the easiest to give yourself a check and say, okay, wait a second, what should I be doing right now? If you're in a situation, whether it's therapeutic in a professional therapeutic setting, or you're having a conversation with your best friend over dinner, think, what should I be doing right now? You can think back to ORs. Am I listening to what they're saying enough? Enough to ask a good question about it? Enough to understand why they're saying what they're saying, where they're coming from? Enough to be able to reproduce that in myself because I understand it enough? And then finally enough to, it's funny because there's this one guy, Rappaport, and he came up with Rappaport's rules for discourse. And it's interesting because it's similar to ORs, but not exactly ordered the same. So in Rappaport's rules for discourse, the S in ORs comes first. So he says, when you're listening to somebody make a point, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's essentially summarize their point to such a refinement that they think your explanation is better than their own. So when you are able, when you have the right to respond to what someone says, when they have agreed that what you said is actually a better way of putting what they said initially. And that's what you get from really good listening. And after his 4 rules, he says, only then are you able to respond. And it's really true. When you prioritize the other person's point, you have a lot greater facility in having a conversation. And it all loops back to the point of, if you want to, the less you speak, the more you listen, the more you get to speak. Because if you're sitting by silently while somebody is speaking for 7 minutes straight about something, and you're not there interrupting or correcting them or anything like that, and then not only at the end of that silence do you not go into your own point, but you still continue on what they care about, man, it really grants you this ability to say what you want for however long you want, because you grant that to others. And it also makes it easier. That's the thing. It makes it easier to converse with others because you know that as long as you're speaking to a reasonable person, and this even works on a lot of people that aren't reasonable to have conversations with, that you will get to say everything you want to say. You will have that chance. You don't have to say it right away. You don't have to interject with other people frequently in order to have this feeling that you're going to be heard. You can rest assured knowing that you will be heard as long as you hear someone else first. So with that preamble, let's get into Motivational Interviewing for Leadership by J. Wilcox, B.C. Kersh, and E. Jenkins, who, if I'm remembering correctly, are all psychologists. I do know that they're all doctors of some kind. Jason Wilcox, LCSW, and both Brian Kersh and Elizabeth Jenkins are doctors. So let's get into this. This first part here is talking about MI spirit. The MI spirit is what should your approach be in using these tools? Because the problem is that this tool is so effective for guiding conversations in the right direction that they can be guided in, they can be used as an immoral tool, or as a tool to make immoral actions by manipulating others, or by making them think certain things, or putting ideas in their head which they didn't necessarily attract or take on themselves. So it can be used for bad. But the goal, of course, here is to use it for good. So here is a section on MI spirit. Miller and Rolnick, those are the people which really spearheaded motivational interviewing. I believe Miller was the pioneer of motivational interviewing. Miller and Rolnick refer to the underlying attitude of MI, noted above as the spirit of MI. They describe the four necessary components of the MI spirit as partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. Partnership involves the active promotion of teamwork and collaboration. It is the explicit recognition that each member of the team brings valuable elements to the table and that each deserves a say in the plan for behavior change. That is something that, now, of course, this is motivational interviewing for leadership. So every one of these explanations or situations or examples are going to be geared towards more of the business or corporate setting, or professional teamwork setting, I guess, to put it more broadly. So that is what we're going to be talking a lot about here, especially considering that the follow-up book is about selling, which is necessarily business related for the most part, which I will get into later because these concepts apply to everything. So the element here is that you need to value people exactly as they are, because each person has lived a different life and therefore can offer different meaningful perspectives. No such thing exists as an add-on or an attaché to a group if the individual or individuals will be present for an extended period. The goal in that teamwork setting is to treat each person as if they will have the magic bullet idea to resolve the problem or achieve the goal, and they will start shooting those bullets. If you treat people like they have the magic bullet, they will start shooting those bullets. And this is an idea that, or rather the inverse of this is an idea that can creep into the minds of a lot of leaders, that either it becomes very, very self-centered or egocentric in the sense that I have the best ideas and the other people around me are there just to do the work, or it can be delegated outside of the leader in the group, but is delegated towards specific individuals. They're the ones that are competent and smart, and they can come up with the solutions to the problem. So that's what I'm going to gear everything towards, is having these people figure it out. And the rest of them are just the grunts that do the work, and what they say really doesn't matter. And you can experience something like this even as a young person. You don't have to be developed or need to have years of experience to know what's going on here. I remember this happening in sports teams that I was playing on as a child in elementary school. I'm in the single digits of years of my life, and you have the star players on the team that either they always seem to end up having the ball because they're ball hogs, or even the coach says, hey, these are the best players on the team. They're the ones that are going to be able to score the goal the easiest. So pass it to them whenever you can because they're the most skilled. And this happens in sports teams for both children and adults, in professional settings where there is the star of the show, and they're going to do everything. And that's a problem, because then that breeds resentment in the team of, if this person's going to take care of it anyway, what's the point in me doing any real work here? And that's when you start to stunt growth in your organization or on your team. Now back to the book here. They talk about explicit here, the explicit recognition of the team members, then moves on to talking about acceptance, and which is the second of the four. The next is compassion, and the last one is evocation, which is the one I want to touch on here. So back to the book. The individual practicing MI need not disregard his own best interests, but he certainly does not put these ahead of the other individual or individuals. Finally, evocation is the active and deliberate process of seeking and appreciating the ideas, reasons, and values around change from the other individual. It is the recognition that these ideas have real value and merit, and they are more likely to be compelling to the other person than our own ideas would be, even if we perceive our own ideas as superior. So this is where the whole idea comes in with go with other people's plans. If you're on a team, and I've said it a million times before, and I'll say it a million times again, is if you know, let's say you're the leader of the group and there's a solution that you have to come up with, and you know, you are 99% sure that your idea is the ideal one for the situation, which is to say, if you were to rate the efficacy of this solution, if it were implemented, it would be a 10 out of 10 solution. Okay, that's all fine. But now this is a 10 out of 10 solution being performed by another person. So by the other person on the team, it's not their idea. So they're just going to do it. They're going to do it well. They're going to do it well if they're a good employee or a good other member of this group. But it's not going to have the fervor behind it. What you want is the fervor, and how you get that is by going with their plan. So if you have a 10 out of 10 plan and that's inside your head, and you say, hey, y'all, how do you think we should go about doing this? And somebody on the team presents their plan that's an 8 out of 10, then you say, okay, I like that plan, go with it. Because what you're hearing as an 8 out of 10 plan is their idea. And because it's their idea, they're going to care about it more. So they're going to think, hey, as they're doing it, wait a second, am I doing this the best way? Was my plan actually good in the first place? What if I can make my plan even better? So that 8 out of 10 is going to turn into a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. Or even if it's a 3 out of 10, now you get to a point where an idea is so bad that it needs correcting. So you say, yes, I think that's going in the right direction. What do you think we could add to that? Or what do you think we could change to, this is our goal here. How do you think we could get closer to that? And you ask O in OR's open-ended questions, which allow them to think critically about the thing that they just said. So it's asking questions like, what do you think? Or how should we do this? Or what consequences do you reckon this will have? Or how would you improve this plan? Do you see any opportunities for optimization here? Now, later in the book, I don't know if I've made an excerpt out of it, if I've highlighted or wrote a sticky annotation about it, but they talk about the different words you can use, how you can start sentences for them to be open-ended. And one thing they advise against, or not advise against, but they put on a list of things you should probably avoid. One of them is the word do, because you could say, do you exercise? And using the word do is a yes or no question. A lot of times, do you do this or do you do that? If that's not how it actually is in reality, that's at least how it's perceived. So yes, there are certain words that you can use that will make it seem more like an open-ended question, but you can also use words that wouldn't naturally be an open-ended question, but still use them. Like, do you see any opportunities for optimization here? Because the answer could be yes or could be no, but it suggests not that you're just going to give a yes or no answer, but that you're going to say, yeah, actually over here, I can see that we could actually, we could spend a half an hour longer on this part, and that will actually shorten a later part in the process by an hour because we understand this system better. So So there are more exceptions. One interesting exception is instead of using a question, using a statement starting with "tell me." Because if somebody is talking about something and you say, "Oh, tell me more about how you improved, how you got this project in on time and under budget." It's a statement, but it's something that is it's evocative of a deeper meaning or of a deeper conversation to be had here. Back to the book, that's what they're talking about here. Once they've mutually agreed upon a target, let us say eating healthier, the doctor begins to evoke change talk about eating healthier from her patient by asking him his reasons and ideas around eating healthier. She might even probe the patient for past attempts around eating healthier and reflect back to the patient any strengths and or successes she hears. Once it sounds like the patient is ready to make changes around eating healthier, then and only then would the doctor negotiate with her patient an actual plan. For example, a specific diet or meal plan for implementing dietary changes. Now, this is one thing psychologists love, in addition to their acronyms, is their different systems. And one thing they're talking about here is change talk, which they summarize with a 7-letter acronym. It's as bad as the military, honestly. And it's short for darn cat. For desire, ability, reason, need, commitment, activating, and taking steps. And this is all around how do you inspire change in another person. So that is what they're brushing on here. And it's reading examples like this that actually kind of make me upset that it doesn't work like this typically in the medical setting, at least in when it comes to, I'm not sure what it would be called, but bodily health or physical health as opposed to mental health. Because it seems like there a lot, at least in my experiences, and it seems like what is a common experience among other people, is that what you get from the doctor or from the medical practitioner in this setting is being planned first. What they're mentioning here is to be planned last. You ask questions, you talk about topics, and then you come up with the plan, the meal plan or specific diet last. Not first saying, hey, this is what I noticed, this is what you got to do. Because that's starting from the destination, which is perverse. And it will have the opposite intended effect, and it will push. A push will inspire a pull, which is to say, if you're pushing a plan forward, that person is going to pull back on what you're suggesting, because they're going to feel like there is this big that something's being imposed upon them. People don't like that. It has to come within. Has to come from within. So if you go to the doctor and you're overweight and the doctor tells you you're fat, you need to lose weight, yeah, how helpful is that going to be? But if the doctor says, asks you how your week has been going, and then extrapolates from that, and then says, and you say, let's say it's best case scenario. Hey, I've been having a great week at work. Things have been going my way. And in my home life, I've been doing all the chores I need to, and me and my partner are happy with each other. Okay, that's about as good as it's going to get. Personal, professional, etc. And you can go into that and say, it seems like a lot of things are going well in your life. What else do you think you could do in your life to help you live happier and healthier and longer, if that's something that you want? And it's through these open-ended questions where they say, yeah, you know what? This week has been going great. But one thing I've noticed is that I feel like by the end of the day, I'm just extra tired. And that could be a good thing. That's something personally, at least for me, that's what I look for, is I know I've had a good day when I'm ready to put my head on that pillow. Because that means I've expended all my energy, I've done all the things I need to do. That's a good sign. For other people, it's not a good sign, because that means I don't have enough energy to do the things I want. And then you could guide the conversation from feeling about your energy to talking about diet to talking about exercise. So it's not about just saying, I mean, I know somebody who at this point in time was overweight to a point of where we're unambiguously overweight, where it was just obviously unhealthy. Went into the doctor, and the doctor, you know, talking about health with the doctor, and the doctor says, you need to lose more weight. You're not doing, you know, you're not where you should be, essentially, is what the doctor said. Despite the fact that this person I knew went into the office and had recently lost 50 pounds. So you can get these situations where they are top down, they're being dictated from the top down of what they should be doing without consideration of what they're doing already. So back to the book. Consider the difference between someone telling you, I like how you did that, versus you put a lot of effort into that. The first statement carries an implication that it was good that you pleased the speaker. The second merely highlights the effort you put into the task without bringing the speaker into it. This is a subtle distinction, and it can also be a powerful one. As a general rule of thumb, when offering affirmations, as much as possible, make the other person the focus of the statement and leave yourself out of it. I think you're getting what it says on the tin there. If you're commenting on the actions of a person, ensure the subject of the sentence is actually on that person rather than yourself. Her success is hers and hers alone. I think that speaks for itself enough there. It's not always about you. And that can be very misleading, because you would think that if someone does something great and you say that you like how they did that you're saying, hey, you did this thing so well that it's not only a good product, but I actually enjoy what you did. I actually enjoy what you did. That's a good thing that you did. But hey, it's not all about you, because that's combining two people in the same sentence. Is I like how you did that. No, put the focus on them. You put a lot of effort into that. It really makes a difference. And a lot of times it can come with just cutting off the beginning of the sentence. Instead of saying, I think you did a great job on that, say, you did a great job on that. It's really a matter of being parsimonious with the personal pronoun. And that's what ORS is all about. It's focusing on the other person. That's what open-ended questions are for, is asking the other person something. You're trying to put the focus on their thoughts. Back to the book here. As we present this book and examine the different components that make up MI Lead, we hope you will experience the same success and excitement that Mary did. Mary's this example that they covered in a business setting. MI Lead can be a very powerful communication style when used correctly. As we describe in more detail later, the MI Lead approach is not intended to manipulate others. Instead, it is designed to help leaders guide and work collaboratively with others in a manner that helps promote both individual and team goals. So, it's for the team. And it's for the individuals that make up the team. It is not to get what you want all the time. It can be used for that. Motivational interviewing can be used to get what you want. The tricky part is ensuring that what you want aligns with what others want. That's something that I've used as a quick little tool or quick little behavior check as I progress through life and try and be a better person than I was yesterday. It is, I have a certain power to guide this situation or this conversation in one direction over another. I know that I can exert my will in such a way in this situation, in this conversation, that is so indirect or so incognito that I could get the person to do what I want or say what I want, and maybe they wouldn't even be none the wiser. Let's say that this situation means that I have that ability in my hand. And that's where the power of questions comes from, because you can ask somebody a question in such a way, even still, that you're really getting what you want. So you have to be very careful with being sure that you're putting out there, hey, I'm trying to ask this so I understand what you're thinking, what you think is best, because I want to understand that, so we can have the best outcome here. It is not, I'm going to ask you a question that has one answer available to it, and that's something that I've certainly done in the past, not intentionally, but I think I know the best way to do something, or I know the most ideal thought to have in this situation, whatever that means, and I can ask a question that will give the other person no choice but to say the thing I want. And that's a valuable skill. You have to check yourself with, what does that actually imply for our relationship mutually right now? And where is that going to lead us to? So these are powerful things. Acting with intention is not a cousin of manipulation as we typically conceptualize it. If speech and action are oriented toward the benefit of others and the self in a symbiotic way, then there's no malice in choosing to say one thing over another. So you have to really understand, what is it that is going to fructify the other person's future, as opposed to thinking you know what's right and being insidiously indigent in this situation, and you're just going to you're putting up your wall of, this is what's happening, and that's it. So be careful with that. Now, again, this is one of those once a book situations where I have something highlighted with no annotation because it speaks for itself. I'm not even going to give any context to the highlight and read a bit before. I'm just going to read you the highlight. Guiding someone using MI lead tends to be more effective in helping others achieve their goals, both short-term and long-term, when compared with authoritarian control. That's all you need to know. We're going to go back to the book because really that is all you need to know. So, yes, back to the book. Now, I'm going to read this little section here. One thing I like is that they go through, they're not just talking about things in concept, but they go through examples of back and forth conversations that you can have. That's one thing I love about psychologists and mental health practitioners, is because they have this practical experience on a day-to-day basis with how these conversations go with others. And they have this infinite database of what they, of how people react to certain things. That's why psychology is such a powerful field. Because the best thing you can do in life is understand human nature, because that allows you to understand others and understand yourself. And I think the best course to getting to furthering your understanding of human nature is through psychology. So this subsection is called eliciting and responding to change talk. So to the book here. The components of ORS introduced in previous chapters are essential to evoking change talk and resolving ambivalence about engaging in a specific individual or organizational change. Open-ended questions can include hypothetical scenarios, looking forward, encouraging elaboration, the ruler exercises, identification of goals and values, and coming alongside. Each of these are explained and demonstrated below. When a person does not view a particular goal or change as important, hypothetical questions can encourage them to begin considering what change might look like, but without the pressure of having to commit to it. For example, you might ask someone who is only putting in the minimum amount of work, time, and effort into a program, if you're going to make some changes to increase the quantity and quality of the programs you're developing, what do you imagine you might do? The person is likely to respond with change talk by identifying how the particular the person is likely to respond with change talk by identifying the how of a particular change. The individual will likely talk about what could be done, ability, and may even be considering taking steps towards that goal. You may encourage another leader in your organization to look forward when considering ideas for change that will benefit the leader as well as the organization and those the individual leads. If you look forward if you look ahead 6 months or even a year from now, how do you imagine outcomes will look if you engage in this change and if you don't? So, yeah, I love these examples it gives, and they give counterexamples too. So a couple of the examples that I've been covering so far is about change talk. And how do you go about using motivational interviewing to create change in another person, whether it's with diet and exercise or whether it's with a business plan that you have. And this, every time you think that, hey, whatever, you're presenting these ideas and they're great for promoting change, but what if they don't, what if they don't say that? What if they don't say, oh yeah, actually, now that I think about how I change, because they cover that. What if a person isn't doing change talk, where they're enunciating talk that is suggesting that they want to stay in their ways? So that's great. But back to this point here about encouraging another leader in your organization to look forward when considering ideas for change. Something about the long-term perspectives it encourages a focus on what can be done now to get there as a leader and subordinate. And ask team members what they surmise of the big objectives and what various changes would look like in that context, and what about no change. So exactly as this little quote says here, imagining outcomes if you engage in change and if you don't, that's what long-term is. You don't even have to put a number on it by saying 6 months or 1 year. You can just say, what if you make this change or what if you don't make this change? And that allows them to think about, yeah, if I don't make this change, I'll continue to be efficient in this. Or if I do make this change, that will lead me to a better understanding of how I should go about this process. So the person, which is the importance of open-ended questions, the person has the ability to give whatever answer they want. I had this experience recently where it was the end of the workday, and I was wrapping up my stuff and putting my stuff away, and I had to go into the kitchen at one point and struck up a conversation with one of the other people at my organization, and that is somehow how the conversation went. Where in this situation, it was about nutrition and physical fitness, and we were talking about that in general. And this is someone that I hadn't talked to before, so we were really getting to know each other. And and where I live, this seems to come up really in every conversation when you meet someone, which I actually absolutely love. Because when I lived in Florida, that was never really a topic of conversation of health and fitness. But in Washington, it happens all the time. That's one of the questions, which is, what do you do to exercise, and what's your diet like? which is great because it promotes this it promotes this accountability culture of, hey, someone's going to ask, guaranteed when I meet new people, chances are they're going to ask me about what I'm doing about my health and fitness. So I don't want to give a bad answer. At least that's encouraging for me. And we're talking about this, and I was talking about what I do for health and fitness. And this person says, wow, that's up there. That is definitely beyond what I'm doing. And at one point, much later in the conversation, we're talking about this again, and we're talking about how in her schedule and the priorities and responsibilities that she has makes it difficult to get in some quality exercise time, some real vigorous exercise or meaningful exercise, as opposed to something that's more passive or not really, something that's not going to make huge noticeable impacts on your physical well-being. And I remember asking the question. I said, what if you woke up 10 minutes earlier? Would that, to get in some yoga, would that fit into your schedule with everything else you have going on? And she gave a meaningful answer of, this is what I have physically going on in my house, and this is how it makes me feel about it, and these are the other things that I have going on, and she was kind of thinking through all of these other responsibilities that she has. And she says, that's a good question. I'll have to think about that. And to me, that's how I've hardwired into my brain the dopamine reward, which is not getting the person to change, but getting to the person to think about change, because then that's going to gnaw at them. That's going to say, man, do I really not have 10 minutes? 10 minutes sounds like nothing. I really don't have any, I can't shift around the things that I'm doing on my day-to-day life at all to create 10 minutes for myself. And when people start thinking about that for themselves, that's when the change will come. It might come the next day, it might come the next year. But the point is that they're thinking about it. So that's the point here, is to ask these open-ended questions that make it genuinely seem like you care about the other complications that this person is going on. Because yeah, something might come easily to you, but it doesn't come easily to this other person because they have an entire another world that they're considering and thinking about, and you don't know anything what that's like. Or maybe you do if you know the person intimately. But even if you know the person intimately, there's a lot of things going on in their head. It could be your life partner. And if you're just trying to exert change on someone, ain't gonna happen. Don't even try it. Back to the book. So this is one of those situations that I mentioned where they cover a situation where things don't go your way. Things don't go your way. And the highlight here is with the extrapolation that the authors provide at the end of this hypothetical exchange. So I'm going to read this hypothetical exchange first to get an idea of this. Discord can likewise emerge during the evoking process. As discussed previously, ambivalence is a natural part of the change process. If those you lead are ambivalent about a change, by definition they feel two ways about changing. They both want to change and don't want to. If we solely focus on evoking change talk without ever acknowledging the individual's reluctance to change, we can inadvertently elicit discord. Consider the following example. Leader: so what reasons do you see for completing the upcoming communication skills training? Team member: well, of course, anyone who's working directly with people needs to know how to communicate effectively. It's just I've never had any formal complaints from other members of the team or the people we work with. I usually get really good feedback about the work I do with them, and I've just got too much on my plate right at this time. What might make the training a higher priority for you at this time? At this time, that's just it. Now's not a good time. I could see doing it later. I suppose there's always room for improvement, and maybe the training could be useful, but now is not the best time. Perhaps after the end of the fiscal year, when several of the current projects wrap up. It sounds like you recognize that training could help you out some. How do you feel that may be the case? Well, like I said, everybody could probably get better, but that's not really the issue. So nobody's perfect. Where do you see room for improvement for you? I suppose I could learn to listen more effectively. As you know, my individual satisfaction ratings are pretty high across the board, but my ratings on the listening domain aren't as high as in the other domains. So you're seeing room for improvement in listening, and you see a role for the communication skills training in addressing that. It sounds like you're interested in attending the training next month. I don't think you're listening to me. While I think the training may be helpful, now's just not the right time. I mean, you're the leader, and I'll go if you make me, but you should know that if I go, I'm not going to be able to work on these other projects you said were so important. Finally, discord can emerge during planning. So you get that whole example there where you can ask open-ended questions and you can really seem to care about what the other person is thinking and try and do your best to use an indirect approach to guide them towards this pursuit that you think would be valuable for yourself, for the both of you, for the team, for the organization. But it's just not going to go your way. It's just not going to go your way every time. So while you're trying to plan on how to go about making a change, you're still going to get backfire sometimes. And this is what leadership is about for me. I was recently at work having a leadership situation, which was it was an unfamiliar situation for me. It was outside of my comfort zone. I was dealing with an assemblage of personalities on the team with which I had little experience, and I didn't know the best way to go about conducting myself and acting in the team setting that would allow the team to be the most cohesive it could be. So I was struggling a lot here, and there was one point where, in a sense, it came to a head where another team member was saying things in a situation that they shouldn't have said in that situation. And this isn't just a value statement from me. This is coming from other people, both in the situation that had that literally had that experience with me, as well as other people else that heard about this moment afterwards, and so were detached from the situation that said, yeah, that shouldn't have gone like that. So this is not me just asserting my opinion. This is what other people were saying about what was going on. And it was just a not ideal way to handle the situation here between me and this other individual. And to me, that's what leadership is about. Because I was sitting down having lunch one day, reflecting about this experience and about my relationship with this individual as a whole and the team as a whole. And what I came to as I was jotting notes down, reflecting, was leadership is not for the times when it's easy. I read so much about leadership because it gives me this sort of thesaurus to look back on when I really am outside of my comfort zone, to say, okay, what have other people suggested in the past, or what has worked for other people in the past, and how can I implement that into the right now situation? So it's a situation like this where discord can emerge during planning, where things aren't going as you expect, and you need to course correct for that. Notice if your attempts at a listening change talk are meeting resistance. So a shift into the shallow end of sustained talk may be enough of a concession to advance the conversation past the roadblock. It is called rolling or dancing for this reason. Now, rolling or dancing are concepts within motivational interviewing where exactly like this, where you're trying to encourage some change and it's not happening. So what you need to do is a concept that I also mentioned earlier in an excerpt, coming alongside, which is say, you know what, I can't say the right thing at this moment, so I'm going to go along with what they're saying. And even if it's sustained talk, even if it's I can't finish this project on time and it's not going to happen, it's going, because obviously you don't want a person to stay in that mindset. You want them to be in the mindset of, what can I do to make this project come out on time? You say, yeah, you know what, it really seems like this is tough. It really seems like even if you do X, Y, and Z better, not all of them, it's not easy to do all of them better, but let's say hypothetically you did do all of them better, you may still not even get this thing done on time. And it's like, yeah, it's really tough. It's really tough trying to get all these pieces, all these cogs turning at the same speed so that we can finish this project on time. And you got to come alongside a little bit so you relate to them. And it's different than reflecting. It's different than, it seems like you're having a tough time doing it. It's, yeah, it really seems like that's the tough or impossible thing to do. And then because by doing that, by putting yourself in their situation and really putting yourself there, this is not just reflecting what they've said, saying what they said just so you can get some brownie points with them. It is really putting yourself in their shoes, like, dang, this is a tough situation right now. How would I think myself out of this? And then that's where the questions come, where you say, man, yeah, I don't know. This is tough. What if we just focused on this one part? Let's ignore the others for now. What if we just did this better? Do you think that would at least get us from it being a month late to being a week late? Would that have a change at all? And it's really asking genuine questions like that, which will be helpful toward in those situations of guiding the team toward what would be best. Now, back to the book here. So, how do you develop a long-term goal? The first step is in determining how you will measure your outcome. The next step will be to define the targeted change in that outcome. In other words, what is it that you or others within the organization would like to improve? How might you measure it? And what is a realistic outcome to seek? In what amount of time? Flexibility is key. The long-term goals are most likely to be achieved when your team either contributes to its development or has a role in adjusting it or redefining it to make it realistic or achievable. Team support for the long-term goal can mean the difference between success or failure at that goal. And this is exactly what we're talking about on the last excerpt here, the last annotation, which is involving the team in the consideration of the plan. So in that situation where you got to come alongside the other individual who, like I said, is going to be insidiously indigent to what would be better, what do you do in that situation? You say, okay, you're clearly not coming up with a good idea. This is what you should do. No, involve them in the plan. And the leaders I've had which do that, it's really bizarre because the more you read about leadership, the more you easily identify. It's like, imagine your car breaks down and you got a blown head gasket. It would cost more to repair it than to replace the car. Okay, so you got to get a new car and you're thinking about some new ones. In my case, that's going to be a Mazda Miata. That's my next car. So you're going to start seeing Mazda Miatas everywhere. And hopefully by even giving this example, I make you see Mazda Miatas everywhere because your well-being will improve by beginning to notice them more frequently. you're going to start seeing them everywhere. Or maybe you get in a car accident and the one that rear ends you is a Mazda Miata. So now you're going to start seeing Mazda Miatas everywhere because, oh man, you know, that happens with everything. I know someone who their car window got broken into. It was actually, you can hear about that in podcast 10, I believe, with Leah Spiegelman talking about the book, The Heart of the Buddhist Teachings, where she talks about how her car got broken into. And now she mentions all the time, yeah, I find that when I'm at work, I look out the window once or twice throughout the day to see if my car window's still going to be there. Because something like that is a traumatic moment, or even if it's not a traumatic moment, just something happens and you start noticing it all the time. Anytime a goal, so bring it back to this context of long-term goals. Anytime a goal is being projected by yourself or another person, always ask how it would be measured. Then, of course, ask what changes need implementing to get there. Because a goal absent of measurement is a goal unattainable. Now, one thing I saw recently is to not set up goals for yourself, but rather to set up systems. So instead of saying, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day, it's because what if one day you don't get to 1,000 words? What if just the circumstances of life conspire against your ability to write 1,000 words a day and you don't hit 1,000 words? What if instead you set up a system where you say, I'm going to write for an hour a day? You could get in 10,000 words or you can get in 100 words, but you're going to write for an hour a day. So this is a system where you are being rewarded for the activity in itself, not the actual goal. And maybe goals versus systems work. You know, some people work better with goals, some people work better with systems, or systems work better for everybody. Maybe goals are embedded within systems, maybe systems are embedded within goals. I'm not exactly what the psychology on that, you know, how that boils down, but that's essentially what we should be keeping in mind when we're thinking about goals, whether it's what you want to achieve personally or it's something in a group setting. So back to the book here. This is really touching on an important point about motivational interviewing and ORs, generally speaking. So here we go. Having said that, we see the core skills of MI, that is ORs, as being almost universally applicable across leadership situations. So how do we explain the apparent contradiction? The answer lies in the intended purpose or goal of the application of MI skills in any particular situation. That is, it may be appropriate to use ORs to engage with someone you lead in a particular situation, such as when trying to learn what an individual's goals and values are. That is what a team member sees as his or her best interests, while attempting to evoke a particular behavior from the individual in the same situation. For instance, in the absence of knowing his or her best interests, would be inappropriate. In other words, the determination of whether the use of MI lead is appropriate in any given leadership situation depends largely upon which MI process you are employing given the context of the situation. It may be that the general MI lead approach is appropriate, although given the current circumstances, one or more of the processes would be inappropriate from an ethical standpoint. So that's a really important point. And another thing they mention is you could be using ORs, but you could be using the wrong letter at the wrong time. Maybe you are summarizing when you should be asking open-ended questions. Maybe you are affirming when you should be reflecting. And this can lead to, so a few of the examples that they give, I'm not going to read the whole paragraphs, but the opening line is engaging or focusing when the team member is ready for action in an appropriate direction. So in this case, you're too far behind. This person is ready to make a plan and ready to do something about it, and you're just kind of shooting the wind with them and thinking about what you could do. Another one is evoking or planning when the leaders' and employees' best interests are not aligned. So that's the opposite direction. That's when you haven't engaged or focused yet and said, okay, what should we actually be thinking about or doing here? Which direction are we moving? You haven't even established that yet, and you're trying to make a plan. That's not going to work. And they have a couple of others here, which I'll say these because I think they're important to think about. A decision by leadership has been made and the team member has very little or no say in the decision-making process, such as in disciplinary action or performance improvement plan. So this is something that is a top-down situation and the subordinate employee is not involved. Not a good situation. The last one here is a leader is invested in a particular outcome and intends to use coercive power to achieve it. That thing can stand on its own two legs in terms of making demonstrable exactly why you wouldn't want to do that. So this concept in general of using motivational interviewing, the appropriate elements of motivational interviewing in the appropriate situation. Coming back to that, you got to account for the fact that you could be doing the right thing at the wrong time. An additional factor which makes leadership hard. The mismatch, given the presence of the power difference or possible power difference, may lead to actual accidental manipulation. So that is another tough thing about MI as well as leadership generally, which is not only could you be doing the right thing at the wrong time, you could be having the right mentality and be wrong about it. So you're being unintentional with exactly what you're imposing. And going back to the book, one of the final things that they mention, MI lead is not easy to learn. A good MI practitioner can make it look effortless. To an outside observer, one not familiar with MI, a conversation between a good MI lead practitioner and a team member can simply look like a pleasant and productive conversation and nothing more. The observer might be tempted to think, I can do that. That's easy. I have pleasant conversations with others all the time. It's especially easy when the other person is being so reasonable and agreeable. Now, of course, that's exactly what I mentioned earlier. Leadership is for the moments when it's not easy. And leadership is so tricky because the whole pursuit is about building relationships, which is perhaps the most complex and cognitively, emotionally, ethically demanding activity there is out there. Building relationships. So, building relationships is at the core of everything we do. It's at the core of motivational interviewing. It's at the core of leadership. And it's at the core of selling, which acts as a perfect preamble to understanding the concepts of selling, the cliches of selling, and why they work. Because sales is all about building relationships. That is, if you can't build relationships properly, you're never going to get anywhere in sales. And that is why Barry Farber here talks about the 12 cliches, because they're cliches for a reason. So let's get into it. Back to the book here. He sells other people's inventions as well as his own. A friend of his developed a special kind of bookbinding glue that would turn transparent when applied, and Mason decided that it would be perfect for schools and libraries. He traveled around trying to sell this glue, And when he met a person, when he met with a school superintendent in Pennsylvania who didn't want to buy it, he was furious. He went out to his car, slammed the door shut, and fumed. But then he thought, why am I furious with the superintendent? I should be furious with myself. The customer said no, and I wasn't ready for it. I didn't give him enough information to understand why he should buy my glue. It was my fault, not his. That has continued to be Mason's philosophy. When he gets a no from a prospect, he believes the prospect is really saying, I don't yet have the information I need to say yes. This is in the chapter Cliché, Never Take No for an Answer. And there's also baked into this, I'm sure you can tell, a little bit of extreme ownership. It was my fault, not his. And that's exactly what you got to do. Assume the full responsibility for the ongoings of life. If you're getting a series of no's from people or silently from situations themselves, presume you have improperly prepared for that situation. Think of ways to improve your chances of success for the next time. So keep in mind in all of these instances exactly how motivational interviewing plays into it. Because imagine using motivational interviewing in the right situation, in the right way, in this situation, where he was talking to the school superintendent, and if he did prepare properly and had the right information to present and ask the right questions and such, maybe he would have got the superintendent to say yes to his glue. Back to the book. For instance, you might hear a typical objection like, I don't have the money in the budget, or I'm happy with our present vendor. The worst thing you can do is argue with a prospect when an objective comes up, when an objection comes up. As soon as you argue, you lose. The prospect will immediately get defensive and will not listen to what you have to say. Let the prospect know you're sympathetic to his or her position. Remember, you can get more with honey than with vinegar. You can often diffuse an objection by using the 3-step feel, felt, found method. Empathize with your prospect by saying, I understand how you feel. Then build on the success you've had with other customers by saying, many of my present customers felt the same way, but when they found how much time they saved using our product or service, they were amazed. I'd like to find out if we can do the same for you. Finish by saying, I'll be in your area Thursday morning and Friday afternoon. Which is better for you? So, is this literally not just motivational interviewing? First, empathetically engaging with the person, then affirm their feelings, then finish with how other people in similar situations handled the concern. If sales can benefit from therapeutic techniques, any situation can. This is exactly what we're talking about. This is a 3-step process, feel, felt, found, instead of the 4-letter one of ORS, but it's exactly the same thing. You're relating to the person. You're talking about what else could possibly be successful or what else has possibly been successful in the past, and then planning. Then you enter the planning stage. So it's wicked. And one of the reasons why I'm doing both of these books in the same podcast is because I read them back to back. I read Am I Lead first, and then I read Clichés of Selling. And that really consecrated in my mind this idea of the fact that they're the same thing. And again, back to the Musashi quote, when you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. So when you know relationships broadly, you see it in all things. Back to the book here. He's talking about a sale he made once where it wasn't exactly going his way, and this is in the chapter, the cliche, the relationship is everything. And the sale wasn't going his way, and he understood from the little small talk or building the relationship with the saleee that one of the things on her plate was her house. Her house had to be painted. He said, I'll paint your house, I said jokingly. Buy my books and I'll do the whole job for you. She started to laugh, and I knew our relationship had changed. That afternoon, I bought a paintbrush and selected some sample colors and overnighted them to her with a letter that said, I'm ready to start painting and I'll never, ever give up. About a month later, there was a message from her on my voicemail saying, Barry, get ready to start painting. We selected your book. The company ended up buying over 20,000 copies, and later my client told me she'd framed the paintbrush and samples and has them hanging on her wall. No sale is made by one factor alone. Sales are made up of all the things you say and do along the way, leading to the close. And of course, the product has to be right for the prospect. Often, however, the one thing that gets you past barriers and through objections is the relationship you form with the customer. So think about that in a team setting, in your business, where you have a tough thing that's got to get done. It might be, instead of working 40 hours this week, you got to work 60 hours this week. Okay, that's a big time investment. That's an extra 20 hours. Divided by 5 days, that's an extra 4 hours a day. You know what that means when you're working an extra 4 hours a day? You know what that means for me? I'm waking up, working, and going back to sleep. Because even if you don't have a lunch, you just skip your lunch, you eat your lunch at your desk every day for that week. That's still half of your waking time of that day. You're spending, if that's 60 hours a week, extra 4 hours a day, that's 12 hours. Now you only got a couple of hours to read, exercise, and eat, and that's pretty much it before you gotta go to bed. Maybe for that week, because it's a short burn effort, you say, okay, I'll cut down on these other things so I can make this happen. If you don't have that relationship built with your subordinates or built with your leader, not only are those people not going to volunteer to sacrifice the niceties of their daily habits and daily living, but you got to ask for it. And when you ask for it, they're going to do it reluctantly and probably not even do the best job they want to do anyway. And that comes when you build relationships with them. And I found that with group settings in my life, that when my relationship with the other person is not where it should be, they do less to accommodate me. I do less to accommodate them. And I would like to, I wouldn't say I would like to. It would, in a perfect world, the relationship wouldn't matter. And if something's got to get done, then everybody on the team is going to commit to doing it. But the reality of the world is that that's not going to happen unless the relationships are there. And every person builds relationships in different ways. It's not just about talking to somebody about a vacation that they recently had. It's relating to them in whatever way they find to be relatable and enjoyable or valuable or meaningful. So that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. You're not going to get the project done in one way alone. It's a combination of other factors. Now, this is an interesting thing that I've highlighted here, which is not an actual part of the text itself, because he has subsections throughout the chapter. And this one is called "People Don't Care How Much You Know Until They Know How Much You Care." Wow. That tells you a lot in that simple little statement there. Because who are you most likely to befriend based on initial impressions? A know-it-all or a person caring sincerely for your interests and well-being. Put the other person first, and greater interrelational connections will come this way. It's just true. It's just a fact. There are only so many true facts in this world, and that is a fact. That's something I've come to see over and over and over again in everything I read, whether it's motivational interviewing and therapy, whether it's sales, whether it's things in my personal life, is the more I do for other people, the more my life gets better. That's just a fact. When I care more about what the other person's saying, when I'm having a conversation with somebody, and again, it's this kind of, maybe I can coin a term, dopamine reward replacement here, where I've come to replace my dopamine reward with not being able to talk about what I want to talk about, but with the fact that I know I have a lot to talk about, but I got the other person to think about whatever this thing is. Like that situation with the waking up 10 minutes earlier. And yes, I did talk about my lifestyle when it comes to nutrition and physical fitness, but it wasn't me imposing this is what you should do. It was her asking, what do you do? And then an hour later in the conversation, asking a question about how her life is. And then it comes up naturally. So it's, when you do something for the other person, when you engage with this person in a meaningful way, and you think, you have a conversation in which you're thinking about topics with which that person cares about, that's what's going to happen. Or somebody says, hey, I have this effort here, and I need some help getting it done. Would you like to help me in getting it done? Yes. It doesn't even matter what it is. Yes, I'll do it. Is it some highly respectable action that has to be done? Okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Is it some grunt work that is some low reward activity? I'll do that too. Because when you begin to accumulate a reservoir of things you've done for other people, people want to work with you. And when people want to work with you, people give you responsibility to do things. When people give you responsibility to do things, that's when you start to get to do what you want, because you have the responsibility of getting this thing done. And maybe people will be in your charge to get that thing done. And then you start to do more what you want. Now, it's not always to the goal of, yes, I have to do 17 things for other people and then I get to do what I want. No, because it's always about others. Once you finally, quote, get to do what you want, it's still about doing what other people want. It's still about being a leader in a situation where you say, hey, what should we do here? And you build up that leadership capital where you go with other people's ideas and you care more about other people as often as you can, because there are going to be times when you got to call in a big favor, when you got to say, hey, this is how it has to be done. It has to be done in this exact way. You've over time accumulated the respect of other people because you've cared about them and say, hey, this guy's cared about me so much over time, I can do this one thing for him. So it's almost being conservative with the capital of leadership you have saved up for. So back to the book. Which brings us to one of the most important qualities a salesperson can possess: empathy, the ability to understand and appreciate what's most important to another human being. Customers look for salespeople who demonstrate this quality, who are sincerely interested in them and in their business. What is the impression you make when you demonstrate this interest? The impression is that you care. A famous study conducted by the Rockefeller Institute several years ago revealed 6 major reasons customers stop buying. 68% of defectors left because of an attitude of, quote, an attitude of indifference shown by one or more representatives of the supplier, unquote. Those customers felt that the salesperson just didn't care enough. Only 14% left because they were dissatisfied with the product. Another 9% left for competitive reasons, and the remainder cited reasons such as prior connections. I had a personal experience with this that gives me unpleasant flashbacks thinking about, which is my experience with Bank of America, because this was during the full swing of COVID times, and I had some things happen to me outside of my control and led me to be in an unideal financial situation with Bank of America. And the way that which have been my experiences in the past with other financial institutions, have been quick and easy. And with Bank of America, it was the opposite of quick and easy, and then had some implications down the road that led to some unfortunate situations with myself. And was just, it came about essentially by my experience with a string of people at Bank of America, which were either less competent and knowledgeable than the specifics of my situation required, or just weren't good salespeople. In this case, it's not salespeople, it's customer service. But after I got this whole thing resolved, I just committed. I got some plastic surgery. I cut up my Bank of America card, closed my account, and I don't plan on dealing with them as long as I can afford not dealing with them in the future. And it's exactly because of that. It's because of the people that I dealt with. Now, that's not to say that everyone at Bank of America is bad. That's not to say that Bank of America is a horrible company. They're a company for a reason. They must be doing something right. They're big, so they must be doing something right. And my personal anecdote is not a synecdoche of their entire business structure as a whole, but it was my experience, and it was a persistent experience. And so let's think about this whole thing from a business perspective. These what Farber talks about here is these major reasons why customers stop using a service. From a business perspective, this is why every employee must be somehow competent in customer-facing situations. Every team member is the face of the company when talking to anyone external. Internally, too, people must be presentable. Otherwise, employees may think, this is our standard. So this is something that I think about when it comes to, so in a business, you will have, let's say it is a product that's being sold. So you have the salespeople selling it. You have the experts developing the product and doing the research, the R&D. You have the tech people, the IT, who are helping troubleshoot this product or whatever, as well as just general support, making sure that everybody can do their jobs, that computers are working right, that the servers are running, everything like that. And generally, what happens in organizations is you have a degradation of presentability as you get deeper towards the back of the cave of that organization. So of course you have the salespeople, which are hopefully coming to work every day in a suit and tie and are reasonably amicable in such a way that allows them to do their job as a salesperson. And then you take your steps further back in terms of getting further away from dealing with the customer or the client directly. And for example, you'll have people's outfits not being so right. So you have the salesperson coming to work every day in a suit and tie, and you'll have the IT people coming to work in a ripped t-shirt and Nikes. And hey, if they're good at their job, great. And in a lot of organizations and structures, that doesn't matter so much. In some organizations and structures, it totally debases what's going on, because you can be sitting at your desk and you have somebody that may be good at their job in IT, but they're not very pleasant to talk to. They're rude. They just visually, they're not put together. It doesn't look like they put themselves together very well in the morning before leaving the house. And if you have a lot of these people in your organization and they think, just because I'm not dealing with the client directly, I don't have to be this paragon of personability, then it's just this inner disintegration that occurs where you think, okay, if they don't got to be nice to people, I don't got to be nice to people. I don't got to come to work every day in an outfit that makes me look like I have any pride in my appearance and everything like that. And then that just leads to more ideological deficiencies in how that business operates. Again, it affects some businesses more than others. And undeniably, it's a factor present, whether it is to a big extreme or not to an extreme at all. Back to the book. Picture yourself waking up in the morning and thinking about the day ahead. The day holds the possibilities of great financial rewards and personal satisfaction, but you know the odds. Every phone call you make, every meeting you attend, and every letter you write invites rejection. You'll make dozens of calls asking people to buy what you sell, and more often than not, the answer will be no. In fact, whole days may go by without a single yes. Week in and week out, you have to face the likelihood of rejection, obstacles, failures, and setbacks. Salespeople are made of the same stuff as every other human being. If you didn't get discouraged and depressed sometimes, you'd be a robot. It's part of the life you've chosen, the living you make. But the most successful salespeople are those who can maintain a positive attitude despite the rejections. It's not that they go around whistling a happy tune all day. It's that they don't let the rough times shape their world. Yes, this is what good salespeople do. This is what good people do. This is what good employees do. This is what good partners do, what good friends do. This is how you be. I was listening to a Jordan Peterson clip about, imagine yourself in a situation where a family member dies. It's about as bad as it can get. And you have your family around you, your friends around you, and everybody that knew this family member. And that's going to be emotionally and practically gruesome on a moment-to-moment basis for the next long while of your life. So, what do you do in that situation? You mourn, of course. You be sad. You be all those other emotions that are co-requisites for a person you love and others love dying. Think about who you're going to be. What kind of person are you going to be in that situation? Are you going to be the crippled husk, which others see as, and you experience as, incapable of moving forward and being upright in that situation? Or are you the obelisk, which others migrate toward to gain strength within themselves? Which person do you want to be? Do you want to be the person that allows others to not be these crippled husks? These are serious conversations one must have with the self in order to configure your mindset. Because your mindset is not just what happens in your brain, what happens to your brain. It's what you actively do of your own volition, which organizes your mindset. So who are you going to be? To bring this to a much lighter situation than something like death, I mentioned that experience earlier at work, where somebody else on the team was saying things in a situation which they really shouldn't have. And I had to deal with this. This was something that was directed at me. And if I reacted, if I let my ego flare up and I dealt with that situation that was just purely reflexive and emotional, people would be looking at me as the person who was just flippant in that situation. Even if, because they would say, yeah, he shouldn't have said that, but even if he did, that guy shouldn't have reacted that way. And then so I immediately become the person who acted in a less desirable way in that situation. But when that person made those statements directed at me, and I sat in my chair with my hands on the desk, sitting up straight, just as I was before he said those comments as afterward, and my voice sounded exactly as it did then, as it does now, and I issue a response that is not disparaging towards anyone and discusses the matter frankly, and I say what I'm going to do about changing that in the future, even if it's not exactly something that I should be doing, but say, hey, if I were to improve this is what I would do in the future. Then that is going to be what people look up to in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that, yes, I gained the unmitigated admiration of everybody else on my team. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that the situation would have been a lot worse if I acted even slightly less desirably, slightly with more flippancy or emotion or ego in that instance. So it's about being unflappable in those situations. And then even afterward, I had one of my supervisors come up to me, because after this happened, it was actually several days after this happened, and I was reflecting on this. I think it was even the next week. I was reflecting on this experience, as I mentioned, thinking about what I could do differently. And I went to my direct supervisor and I said, hey, I'm having a cohesion troubles with my relationship with this person. And I can't seem to make it work between him and I. This is his set of behaviors, his habits of behaviors as I've observed them. This is what I've been doing over time. I've tried X, Y, and Z. That seems to not be working. What do you think my options are for improving our relationship? And I said that because I meant it. I knew that there were things that I could do better to improve our relationship. And later on, he heard from another person on my team exactly what went down in that meeting, in the meeting room on this day. And he says, now that I know more exactly what was going on in that meeting room, I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened. It should have happened. If it did happen, it should have happened differently. I'm sorry you had this experience. And I told him, I said, hey, This is what I said to you before. I actually mentioned to my supervisor what I wrote down in my notebook, that leadership is not for the times when it's easy. And yeah, it should have happened differently, but it didn't. And I was prepared for that situation, and I handled it well. And the other people on the team recognized that there was this disparity between my behavior and the other person's behavior. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, I'm not bothered by it because people are as they are. And I can go about conducting myself in a way that's most beneficial to the situation, and to our relationship as a team and with this individual. But that doesn't mean that the other person's going to act any differently. I can't control that. And who knows? Maybe he had a fight with his wife the night before, and he was just emotionally on edge. And because of that fight, they were fighting late into the night, and he got an hour and a half of sleep, and he's stressed with the projects going on he's got on his plate. And this was a moment of weakness for him, and he said something he shouldn't have said. So what? It's literally, so what? If I continue to bother myself about this, not only is our relationship between me and this individual going to get worse because I have this resentment building up, but there's just no function to it outside of that. So it's really true what Farber is saying here about having this positive attitude despite rejection. Because without that positive attitude, boy, are you in for a rough ride. Because then you're just carrying around negative attitudes. Why would you want that? Doesn't make any sense. Back to the book. This is the beginning of the chapter 5. The harder you work, the luckier you get. This is something I've definitely seen more so in my life, the more I practice this principle. So in the book here, some people think you have to be lucky to be successful. So this is something my best friend mentioned recently. He brought up again something that I mentioned far in the past, which was, I think in the future when I have a business, or maybe not even when I have my own business, but I have a team that I'm the leader of, and I wanna understand this person more. One of the questions that I think has to be a staple question is, are you lucky? And that's not very Oars-like. That's not an open-ended question, and intentionally so. I want it to be close-ended. I want a yes or no answer because of exactly this principle. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And I have certainly seen more beneficial, more good opportunities come to me when I put more effort in. So I think it's commensurate. I think hard work is commensurate with luck. So if you ask someone, and it's another factor there too. When you ask someone, are you lucky? If someone were to ask me that, I would say, absolutely, I am lucky. There's so many things in my life which seem to have been outside of my direct influence, which have gone perfectly well for me. If you were to get someone, because luck is a combination of effort and mindset. So if you have a person that says, no, I have the worst luck in the world, things never seem to go well for me, is that the type of person you want on your team working with you? No. You want someone, because that implies, one, they're not putting in the effort to have things work out well for you. Imagine someone who's a very good athlete on a sports team. Imagine Kobe Bryant. He worked just irrevocably hard at being a good basketball player. And imagine he's playing a game. Maybe it's a high stress game. It's a high stakes game. And he's in a tough situation where he's got to make a shot or make a pass or something like that. And very easily, the shot could have been slapped out of the air, or he could have been just straight up blocked, or a million things could have gone wrong. His grip on the ball could have went wrong. It came off the wrong finger, so he missed the shot. Or his body in the air was in a weird configuration because the dude on him was putting up some good D. Think about all of the hard work that he put in. That means, hey, there were these 19 things going wrong for me in this situation, but I still hit all net outside the 3-point line. So he says, yeah, that was a lucky shot, but I made it. And you know what that is? It's because you've trained yourself so hard that all of these variables that are going wrong become non-variables. And it allows you to focus on what the real 1 or 2 difficulties of the moment are, so you can put all of your mental and physical effort into overcoming those 1 or 2 difficulties. So if I want to ascertain the mindset of a person in a personal and meaningful way, it would be, are you lucky? It says a lot. Big to the book. Some people think you have to be lucky to be successful. You have to be born talented or rich or well-connected, or you have to be in the right place at the right time. In fact, some people use other people's luck as a defense against success. They say, I could be successful too if I had what he had. The fact is that those people will never be successful, no matter what they're handed or how it comes to them. They don't understand that luck is a reward for the hard work you put in to reach your goal. You don't just run into luck, you earn it. Of course, things do happen by chance every once in a while. You might be at your daughter's Little League game and run into someone whose company has been looking for a product just like yours. You might make a cold call to a large account that others have been working on for months, happen to catch someone in immediate need of your service and make a sale. But your lucky break will take you only so far. You've got to be able to put in the effort and follow through. So here's the thing. Luck is not equally random for all people. That's an important point right there. That's exactly what Farber is saying here, is that it's not like luck is random and every 100, if you think about the map of the earth as a grid, and every, let's say, 100 square meters, there is a piece of luck that occurs. You know, there's just a flag on this grid of up, down lines and left, right lines. You have a flag at each one of those points where the lines meet, and that's where luck happens to happen. And a lot of times people are walking straight past these flags. Maybe they're passing within an inch of the flagpole. But every once in a while, you run into one of these flags and you get some luck at this moment of space-time in your life. So it's, everybody, there is this luck, that's this factor out there in the world. It's complete random chance, and people get this random chance every once in a while. No, it's actually the harder you work, the smaller that grid gets, and you run into more luck more often. So luck is not equally random for all people, and instead scales proportionally with effort. Luck is a reward, not a gift. It is the medal at the end of the race, not the rival's broken leg. So you might think that luck is, hey, I'm doing this marathon. There are 100 other competitors here, and 3 of those competitors were medically disqualified because whatever, they overworked themselves, or they stepped wrong and broke their ankle, whatever. The luck is not the other person's broken ankle. Luck is, I've worked hard enough to get this gold medal. Now, part of that is focus, which is what he talks about in the same chapter. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And it's in this list of 10 things, 10 points, which are on the topic of focus, generally speaking. And this is something that, again, when you know the way broadly you see it in all things, this is something Jocko talks about all the time. Make your priority checklist. Spend 8 minutes before you go to bed every day. Write down what you have to do the next day and do it. And that is number 1 on the list here. Make a daily list of things to do and people to call. So I've highlighted number 3 here, but I'm going to read just the titles of all 10 to give some purview here. So 1 is make that daily list. 2, don't skip over the small steps. 3, focus. 4, if you're knocked down, get back up. 5, can't get through the door, try the window. 6, ask for help. 7, be patient. 8, be adaptable. 9, don't just sit there, do something. And 10, keep the faith. So I highlighted number 3 here. That's the one that stuck out to me the most. And here it is. 3, focus. Stay in the moment. Think about what you have to accomplish at the moment you're doing it. You can reflect upon the past and dream about the future when the project is completed, but while it's underway, keep your focus sharp and to the point. When your attention drifts, your tenacity falters and you lose sight of your goals. This is something I really discovered in just my daily practice of reading, is that distraction comes up. I think about what my checklist is for the remainder of the day. I think about a conversation I had with someone the day before. I think all these things come to mind and I just lose time reading. And partly that's valuable. Partly it's valuable to, as you're reading, you're thinking about something, and that's okay. I read something in a book and it makes me reflect. That's exactly what these annotations are. Because if I were to just focus on reading the words to the page and keep reading words until I'm not reading words anymore, then I wouldn't have this capacity to annotate on what I'm reading, which actually deepens my learning. But it's when you start having these unrelated thoughts, and it's implanted in me an increased competence in focus, where I can sit down and say, okay, I'm going to make my brain do this thing for this amount of time. And that's actually something that's something I don't do often enough, which I should probably do more, which is set up little micro work sessions for me by saying, okay, I'm going to shut everything out for 25 minutes and I'm going to work towards this. And then at the end of that, I'm going to go to the fridge and get a snack, or I'm going to listen to some music, or I'm going to take a break, stand around, just not focus on anything, let my brain run wild, whatever it is. Respond to a text message from a friend. Because in that way, when you just insert yourself into that mode and don't leave it, man, you really get a lot. And I noticed that when I'm reading, I need my body to be perfectly still. I'm not shaking my leg. I'm not fiddling with my fingers. I'm not reaching to the edge of the page to single out one page to then turn it. I'm not doing anything. My body is still, and the only thing that's moving is my eyes. And I find myself, when I'm in those moments of intense focus, or when my body is at intense stillness, is when I'm in intense focus. So ordering the body to be at rest allows the mind to flow freely in and out of the concepts involved in the work. Problem solving becomes easier and time moves faster. So my suggestion to you is to find that activity in which you can find stillness, bodily stillness. It's important because there's an inverse relationship between movement and, I won't say movement and focus, and I won't even say movement and mindfulness, because you can get into these different states by doing something. Like let's take the Kobe example. I think he used to have, I think it was Kobe, where he had this principle, this rule of his, where he wouldn't leave the court until he put up 300 free throws. It was something like that. And guaranteed, when you're in that state of stand behind the free throw line, bounce the ball 4 times. I don't know what his ritual is, but every basketball player is a ritual. Bounce the ball 3 times. Look up at the net. Shoot the ball. Walk over. Grab the ball. Come back. Bounce the ball 3 times. Shoot the ball. And you're doing that 300 times in a row, you can enter some intense mindfulness where your mind is focused so hard on doing that thing that your mind begins to flow freely. Your mind becomes a conduit of no interference through which ideas in the universe can transmit into your spirit. So find what that activity is for you. Here onto another list, which is in the subsection of the book. It's not what you know, it's who you know. He has another list here. This list of 9 items is find mentors in different areas, find one great person to emulate, plan to surpass your mentor, read biographies, get rid of anti-mentors, eliminate your own anger, envy, and jealousy, emulate, don't imitate, revisit greatness, and becoming a mentor yourself. A lot of these relate to me. Find mentors in different areas. I do this through reading. That kind of relates to number 4, reading biographies, because you can identify what these traits universal to great people as well as find role models. It's also important in your life to get rid of anti-mentors, like he says, people that who try to, quote, belittle your ambition, unquote. That's actually, so Mark Twain once said, keep away from people who try to belittle your ambition. Small people always do that, but the really great people make you feel that you too can become great. This is actually experience I've had with work recently, which is that one recently I mentioned with this woman I was speaking to. Also with another person where she said, my vocab game is weak. I feel like I'm having conversations with other people and I want to make them feel heard, but I don't got the words to do it. That's partially what empowers me to continue on with my Instagram, which is sharing good ideas I see in books as well as vocab words, because that was kind of a moment of vulnerability for me where I want to learn these words, everything like that, but I don't want to be advertising my ignorance of words. You know, it's like, oh, there are all these things he doesn't know. That's people, because somebody can look at a word and say, I've known that word for since I was a kid. How do you not know what this means? I think it's partly that vulnerability, and partly it's also just putting words out there. So it really empowers me to see, hey, I'm trying to get my life on track with these words, and what you're doing helps me do that. Wow. Wow, is that a powerful thing? And that's what helps me understand I'm doing what's right. Like we were talking earlier about motivational interviewing. How do you know you're manipulating someone maliciously or guiding them generously? I was hoping for the alliteration there, and I got it, but it was not phonetically alliterative, but only on paper. That's how I know I'm doing what's right, is when other people say, my life is getting better because of your influence. So that's what keeps me waking up every day and doing what I do. So those are the 9. The one I highlighted here is in number 1, which is find mentors in different areas. So to the text here, most people think there is only room for one great mentor in their lives. The truth is, there's room for many wise advisors. Some may apply to your business or career, some to your personal life. Find people who are different from each other so that the knowledge you get is not skewed only in one direction. Walk with people who are thirsty for knowledge. Those are people you want to be around. Search out people who have a passionate interest in something that interests you. In college, students do internships to learn from experienced elders. This is a practice we should continue throughout life. Always, yes, I agree. Always be a student. And this reveals the importance of reading to the end of perspective taking. Others' life experiences have much to offer in their capacity to misalign. Then reorient your worldview. You got to seek diversity. You got to look out for people who are so different from you as to challenge what you expect, how you expect the world to operate. I'm going to read this little tidbit here. Again, without context. This is when I just I didn't write a full annotation. I just had a flag here that said always a leader. So the highlight, it's every customer should be treated as if she were the biggest account you have. You never know who's going to recommend you to whom. So you want to be sure that every customer is getting 100% from you. And I wrote always a leader here because that's what it is. You're always a leader. At every moment, your actions are being evaluated, if not from people directly, kind of the universe, if you think about it that way, that what you're doing is not going into the vacuum, going into the void. It's being baked in to actions on the planet somehow. Because even if no one's around to witness it, it's something that at least influences you, and you're going to be interacting with people. So the conglomerate of behaviors and ideas and history you have affects others. So always leader. Always do what you know you should be doing. It's really simple as that. So here's a quote here from a Mario Andretti. And he says, prepare yourself in every way. Prepare yourself in every way you can by increasing your knowledge and adding to your experience so that you can make the most of opportunity when it occurs. And this to me relates to reading, because I read not to use it now, but from when I need it later. So it's not to say, oh, I've read this book, I now know what there needs to be known about this. I'm now smart about this topic. It's no, I read the book. Okay, this is part of my background now. And again, that situation with when this guy was making direct comments towards me in the meeting room. It was the research I've done in the past which allowed me to use it in that moment. It set me up when that opportunity arises to do the right thing. Not, yeah, I'm good now. I know this. So, okay, so I'm returning to the book here, and this is the major thing that made me want to cover both of these books, Motivational Interviewing for Leadership, as well as this one about selling, in the same podcast, and why I think they're so inextricably, intrinsically entangled. Here it is. Back to the book. On the other hand, you show people how much you care by oh, by the way, this is in the cliche, you can't fit a square peg into a round hole. On the other hand, you show people how much you care by focusing on ways to make them feel important. Often, just giving customers your undivided attention will make them feel important. Concentrate on discovering what concerns them most at the moment, and then let them know you understand those concerns and that you'll do your best to help alleviate them. You can sometimes get customers talking by asking such open-ended questions as, can you expand on that? Tell me more about that. Can you go into detail about, or what do you mean? Another technique is called parroting. Is this not literally ORS? The first one is literally ORS, open-ended questions, and then parroting is just the R in ORS, reflecting. It's literally exactly the same thing. It's literally exactly the same thing. If therapy and sales can share methods of communication, it necessarily reifies its capacity for meaningful connections. Who would have guessed this would have been perfect. Who would have guessed this would have been the perfect book to read following the one on motivational interviewing? Back to the book. And it is 11 steps to a successful presentation. 1, determine your purpose. 2, by the way, every time I read this list, you're getting 1 or 2 paragraphs of explication of each, of course. 1, determine your purpose. Visualize a successful outcome. Find how much time you will have. Build rapport. Qualify. Focus on key points. Differentiate yourself. Keep your audience involved. Summarize, close, and follow through. So I was attached most especially to number 2 here, which is visualize a successful outcome. Run through the entire process in your mind. Reiterate the most important points you want to make. Go over your research and the benefits you think will be most important to this prospect. Picture yourself confident, knowledgeable, articulate, and able to handle whatever comes your way. I've interviewed hundreds of successful people, and one of the strongest traits they had in common was the ability to see themselves as successful before they ever reach their goals. And I actually watched a David Goggins video this morning, and it relates exactly to this, where he said one of the strongest things that's been effective for him to completing things in his life, the most difficult things you wouldn't even think about easily accomplishable, it was by imagining himself at the end before even beginning. And that's what's helped me. That's how I base the concept that I stole from him on of recertification, as saying, what is a crazy title idea of something I can think of? What is the crazy outcome that this could be? Think of that first, and then I'll bother myself with how I get there. And that's when I find myself to be the most inspired and successful to complete something, is by putting myself at the end before even considering the logistics. Because at the end of the day, humans can do a lot. You can really do anything. You can't do anything, but you can really do anything. So think about the anything first, and then consider how you will get there. This gets me towards my goals in the most reliable way I've so far utilized. And my prime forward, it's my prime forward force through, like I mentioned, recertifications, imagining the feeling. That's what it is. It's not just saying I've done this goal. It's imagining the feeling of having done it and the repulsion of disappointment. And even in a mild way, this is what has me exercise every morning, is for some reason I'm more incentivized by the stick than the carrot. I'm more incentivized by not by I will feel good after exercising. It is I will feel bad if I don't exercise. So something to consider there. Back to the book, in this section, you get what you pay for. In the subsection, the value of the win-win solution. Here we go. With all the pressure on you as a sales rep to perform and to make your quotas, it's not always easy to focus on building relationships in win-win situations. Therefore, your most challenging task is to make sure you don't lose sight of the real objective. Once you reduce the game to just numbers and it becomes nothing more than making your quota and earning your commission, you lose the joy and fun of selling. The people who are most successful get the most satisfaction out of creating win-win situations. They take pride in a job well done and in helping somebody, knowing that they will be rewarded for it in the end. That's what it is. I think that's what I was talking about earlier with my dopamine reward. I kind of want to change the word, dopamine reward reassignment. I'm reassigning what elicits the release of dopamine in my brain, and it's by creating help for another person or eliciting help in another person. And this is really a ceaselessly reoccurring theme. Focus more on the flourishing of others, and all benefits and good fortune will multiply before making their way back to you. Essentially, give and you will be given. how that works is in a system of not trying to have the hack, trying to hack your way to the end of whatever you're trying to get. It's not about the 6-minute abs. It's not about this one change will improve your life forever. And that's one thing he talks about in the final cliche here. I lied. The next to final cliche, which is you get what you pay for. And he says, here's 6 steps to help you sell value without dropping price. These 6 steps are: go back to basics, listen, offer continual reinforcement, get your customers to sell value for you, which is an interesting one, find out what is most important besides price, and deliver more than you promise. And the one that caught me the most was go back to basics, number 1. The company, so he's talking about a commercial collection agency. And of course, when it comes to collection, if you're collecting money, collecting funds, you're already starting off on a bad foot there. So she was saying that the reputation of the company comes from being ethical. So back to the book. The company recently formed a collection division alliance partnership with NACM/Chicago Midwest that made O'Connor Ravel one of the largest revenue producing agencies in the United States. Other companies were pursuing this alliance, says Ravel, but we didn't even know about it. They called us based on our outstanding reputation, and when the deal went through, we literally doubled the size of our company in 2 weeks. It takes effort to build that kind of reputation. It's the small things that add up to a great reputation, says Ravel. For instance, we believe in personal communication. There is no voicemail in our company except when the offices are closed. Your questions and concerns are answered immediately by a real live person. I wish Bank of America operated under the same policy. And I think what this ultimately substantiates the truth behind is, again, the longest way round is the shortest way home. Every minute is a moment to be an exemplary human being. To be sure, this sometimes means relaxing, but err on the side of amelioration, because moments of leisure will often enough present themselves in a dutifully lived life. What are you doing to live life dutifully? What are you doing to care more about others, to prioritize others? How are you using motivational interviewing in your life to refine your relationships and polish your personability? What is it that you're doing to abide by these important cliches of selling? Like, honesty is the best policy. What are you doing to make sure you're staying familiarized with what strategies in your speech you can use? Because ultimately, everything in our life comes down to our relationships with others. And it's a matter of communicating with them, which defines those relationships. And it's books like these that introduce me to new concepts, as well as remind myself exactly what I should be doing to produce the best situations generally for myself in life. and it is through books which much learning comes. Be a practitioner too, where your personal experience is your greatest educator. Also, remember your reservoir of reads, which goes on to prove the truth. I'm going to call it a truth. I'm going to put myself out there, call it a truth, that literacy is a superpower. If you want to become more literate yourself, there are many ways to do that. One is by supporting local businesses, by going to your used bookstores, thrift stores, etc., and buying the books out of there. Grab off the shelf what calls to you. Another way to do that, other than doing it physically and directly, is by doing it digitally, and maybe also directly by checking out my Instagram, where I post daily excerpts from books, which I find important, along with my sticky note annotations of meaning I've extracted from it, as well as benefiting, as others have, from the vocabulary I put on there. Get your word of the day in. Go check out some words you probably haven't seen yet. See the definitions of them. And make literacy your superpower. And with that, farewell.